Hi, everyone. I'm James Protin. I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for the podcast, Candelore's Barking Beauties, with 5 locations throughout the region, and His Place Coffee Community and more here in Menneson for hosting us.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Candelore, owner of Candelore's Barking Beauties, where our salon is your salon. We have 5 convenient locations, no appointment needed. All breeds welcome. Any size dog. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. We have 5 convenient locations: Elizabeth, White Oak, Finleyville, Monongahela, and Irwin. Love to have you visit us.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm James Protin, your host, as always, and with us today is our guest, Leonard Hammonds II. Leonard is a Marine Corps veteran and founder of the Hammonds Initiative. He's the current district office director for the 19th Legislative District of Western Pennsylvania and a campaign specialist for the Be Me community. Leonard has earned various awards and proclamations for his work. He's received proclamations from former state representatives Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley Jr., along with state representative Anthony Deluca. A few of his awards include the 2021 Marlon J. Lucas Love is Action Community Humanitarian Award, the 2018 VBC Veteran of the Era Award, the 2018 Be Me Black Genius Fellowship Award. That's pretty bold, that one there, right there. Right?
Yes, sir.
And the 2018 Passion Meets the Road Entrepreneur Award, among many, many others. Leonard serves on various boards and committees, including President Obama's My Brother's Keeper Alliance Committee in Pittsburgh and the Heinz Endowments Just Arts Advisory Committee. Leonard is married to LaShondra Hammonds and has 2 beautiful children, Leonard Hammonds III and Camilla Hammonds. So help me welcome Mr. Leonard Hammonds to the podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Came down here, ventured down here to Menneson to join us today. And
thank you for having me on the show. You know, it's an honor and a privilege.
Excellent, excellent. You know, you and I have been connected on social media for a while, and I think it's only like the second time we've actually talked in person, which is really cool. And I think, as I said, that newly elected Mayor Gainey of Pittsburgh is who kind of was the mutual friend that connected us, I'm pretty sure. So.
Absolutely. Love Ed, and he's going to do some great things for the city of Pittsburgh.
He and Jake, I met with them. I had an opportunity to meet with them a few weeks ago, and I love the energy. I love what they're doing, and I think it's going to completely change the trajectory of the city. And it's a beautiful city. We all love it, and we're proud of it, and rightfully so, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I always tell people they are the dynamic duo.
Yeah.
But instead of Batman and Robin, you have 2 Batman. So I said, you know, the city of Pittsburgh could look forward to some great things, both with Ed and Jake, you know, there in the city. Absolutely.
So being a military dad, stepdad dad, I'm impressed with your Marine Corps background. How long did you serve?
I served in the Marines for 7 years.
Okay.
I had an opportunity to see the world and really do some great things. And I was blessed with my position. Former Representative Jake Wheatley is a fellow Marine too. So I've had opportunities to connect with Marines even after my service.
Excellent, excellent. And I know, speaking just from the experience that I've walked through with my son, I've seen the change in him. He's Air Force, which is a little bit different dynamic than the Marine Corps, but I've seen how it has changed him. He's, you know, in his early 30s now. He's gotten married. He's a husband. He's a father. He's got some children, and I'd like to give us a little bit of what you feel, how that military experience has kind of shaped your journey forward to where you are today and who you are.
Well, I would definitely say that the Marine Corps has given me the foundation that I needed as far as discipline. It really has helped my trajectory by allowing me to focus on the things that mean the most to me. And with that, it also allowed me to really build a network of individuals who I could work with. And with that, it has expanded upon my knowledge, my influence, and my network. And with that, you know, I've been able to do some phenomenal things, and I definitely credit that to the Marine Corps.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And you can tell by the way you carry yourself. And I think, you know, the military to me has impressed me to the point where not only does it makes you mentally and physically strong, but it really, you can tell a military person, you can tell a veteran simply by the way they carry themselves, right? And we were talking, I've become a huge advocate of veterans organizations. Got my boots from the Boot Campaign website, which was really cool. My son introduced me to that, but it's a tremendous organization. And I think that there are countries where military service after high school was mandatory, right? A minimum, maybe a 2-year commitment or whatever. What would you think about something like that if the U.S. would institute something like that? You have a son, and a daughter. How would you feel about something like that?
With the history of America, I always feel that anything that an individual should do should be something that's voluntary.
Right. There you go.
So I would definitely say that I would definitely advocate for people to do service, whether it's service to their community, service to their country. But I do feel that every individual should take that opportunity to find out how they can serve those around them.
Excellent. And that's a great point, because to me, you embody servant leadership, what that means, right? Not only with what you do, in the political arena, working for the state legislature and so on, but also, tell me a little bit about the Hammonds Initiative. I'm fascinated by the work that you're doing.
Well, the Hammonds Initiative was founded by myself and my wife. We're both military veterans, and we had seen so many things that were going on in the community. So we had took the initiative, thus came the name Hammonds Initiative. But it really came from a place of loss. My cousin Rio Partlow was murdered in 2006. And with that, it was something that it completely broke me. And I looked at so many people who were suffering great loss. And I said, how can we console individuals? How can we get out there in the community and make it a better place so that individuals do not need to experience the things that we experience on an ongoing basis? How can we get out there and just really have the greatest impact within our community? So with that, we went and we started speaking to youth at different high schools and things like that. And then my wife and I, we decided to, invest our own money into the community to, touch people at the point of their need.
Sure.
And from there, things grew into different programs, and now we've been in existence since 2016 and doing some phenomenal work in the community. You
are doing some great work, and it's got a great reputation. And I follow you on social media, and you said something to me that I thought was great. You met your wife on social media.
I met my wife on social media some years ago in 2007. I had met my wife on MySpace, believe it or not. We're both Christians. Yeah, went back to MySpace. And she said, I'm going to this church, was local, because my wife is a Marine veteran as well.
Oh, okay.
I was out of the military, and she was still in the Marines.
Okay.
So she said, I'm coming with a church group to Pittsburgh. I had an opportunity to go meet her there so we can meet in person. I met her in May, married her in December, and the following year we had our son in September.
That's awesome. That is just awesome.
I said, God works in mysterious ways. I said, I never thought that I'd be marrying a fellow Marine. So
there you go.
It goes back to the Marines. It's just a beautiful foundation.
Yeah,
work
absolutely.
for Marines, married a Marine. So everywhere I go, I say, Semper Fi, hoorah.
I hear you. That is awesome. That is awesome. I love it. So getting back to the Hammonds Initiative real quick, give me a little bit of a feel for the specific programs. And if I wanted to get involved, or if anybody that's listening wanted to get involved, how would we go about doing that?
Okay, well, first and foremost, if anybody would like to get involved, they could give us a call at 412-452-7385, or visit our website at www.hammondsinitiative.org. And a little bit about our programs, we have a mentoring program, which is called Pipeline to Purpose, because we feel with our youth, it's very important for our youth to understand their purpose. And once they have an understanding of their purpose, to walk fully in that. And then we also have Kimberly Francette, who is our board member. She started a program, Life After High School.
Okay.
that teaches financial literacy to our youth.
Excellent.
So that is something that we're
Excellent.
investing heavily into. And then we're also working with individuals who have navigated the criminal justice system. A lot of people like to say, you work with ex-felons. I look at it, we work with individuals from the second chance community.
Yes.
Because it's
I
very
love that.
important to asset frame individuals and really identify people by their strengths and by their aspirations and not from a deficit.
I agree with that. And as a society, we are so quick to put labels on people, right? And I'm a big second chance guy, right? Because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for second chances. If people didn't take a chance on me, we wouldn't be having this conversation, So I love that aspect of it. And I think, when you look at those communities, those are often left behind. Those are often put aside and overlooked, and they're underserved, and I think that everybody needs to have a hand up, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think about where we are in 2022, okay, and thinking back, you're in your mid 40s, do you see, and I'll give you my perspective after. What kind of growth do you see? Do you think that we've grown at all in that 40 some odd years that you've been here as a society? And again, maybe clarify the way that we look at each other and the way that we look at people's circumstances, right? Because the things that you said, a lot of that is generational. Do you know what I mean? There are young people who follow a path that their parents walk, right? Or even their grandparents. And it's not something that they're consciously choosing. It's just almost habitual.
Absolutely. I say that we are showing some progress. I could say with me, I'm an individual who is part of the second chance community myself. A lot of people say, Leonard, I cannot imagine that, that you have a record, looking at all of the things that you have accomplished to date. And I tell people, I said, that is because of the grace of God.
Right.
I said, my parents were outstanding individuals. So were my grandparents, raised, phenomenally. However, for me to get out into the community at that time, I wasn't an asset to my community. Okay. I was a liability. I was an individual who was following the crowd. And I think it was my inability to lead that caused me to make some of the mistakes that I had made in my past. I was an individual who got caught up in the streets selling drugs in the community. And I wasn't building up my community. I was tearing down my community. Right. And that's why it's so important for me now to do the things that I do now, to sow my time, my talent, and my treasure into my community. Because if you could play a hand in tearing down your community, you could put a hand in building up your community. That's great. I love that. And it's all about leading by example right now and giving people something positive to fix their eyes on and to help individuals with their purpose. Because if you do not know your purpose, someone will assign you a purpose until you figure that out. Thank you. And that's what happened to me. That's critically important to understand that, if you follow the crowd, you're at their mercy, right? And I will tell you that you have become a powerful voice, a passionate advocate for the community. And I mentioned to you earlier, not just the Black community, but for the community. And that's something that impresses me about you. And not knowing that about your background, okay, I think that it gives me, shed some light on why you are so passionate about giving back. Because most often than not, when somebody gets to that point, when they have that aha moment, something bad's happened. It comes out of some sort of tragedy or misfortune, right? Or a mistake or something like that. Whether, it's loss, it's incarceration, it's whatever the case may be. So, but whatever gets us to that point, okay, it really fades into the background by the way we move forward with it. Absolutely. Right? And you've moved forward. Listen, my friend, you're doing it right. And I think the community is benefiting from you. And one of the things that we lack down here, and we think of ourselves as Pittsburgh. We're an extension of Pittsburgh. We're an hour away, maybe 45 minutes, depending on traffic. But Pittsburgh's our city. That's how we relate, right? And but that type of programming, it actually does travel well. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And do you have any plans or interest in expanding your reach of the organization further out from the city? We do. We definitely are looking forward to expanding, but also for me as an individual, I am looking to go out, do some life coaching, do some one-on-one mentoring, and just do other things that we really can make sure that we go and plant seeds in different areas. And whether it be Hammonds Initiative, myself, or just with our network, which would like to go to different cities and things like that, really just to make sure that we're helping people, just really fulfill their aspirations and reach their full potential.
That's excellent. Not only do we have a need for that down here in this part of the region, but also I've seen it in other cities. I mentioned Mount Vernon, New York to you, and we did a podcast, Nick and I, with the mayor of Mount Vernon. I told you a little bit about her. And if you get a chance, take a look at that, because that is a city, well, it's in New York Metro, but that is a city that needs exactly what you're doing. Okay. Now there very well could be programming there. I don't know that, but that wasn't talked about. And for me, if they had programming like you're doing, that's something that because they were telling me about their city, they were educating me on their city. So there are a lot of opportunities like that, not just in the inner city, but in the rural America as well. Poor rural communities in Pennsylvania have been left behind for a long time, just as much as urban communities of color. Okay. So I think that there's definitely a need. In fact, we're going to hang a shingle down here for you. We need you down here.
I'm willing to come.
Excellent.
Send
That's
me out,
fantastic.
go.
That is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the political climate in PA, if you don't mind. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because, down here, right now, my man, you're swimming in a sea of red down here. Okay.
Absolutely.
And, and that's a bit of a change. It wasn't always that way, but even now, with the redistricting, okay. Representative Pam Snyder, for example, who was in Greene County, she was the only Democrat down here. And now that the districts have changed and she's retired, it doesn't look like we're going to have any representation from that side of the aisle at all, which is completely different from Allegheny County. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on the ability for the PA legislature to lead us in a bipartisan fashion?
I think that we really need to spend more time focusing on just the people and put all the political things to the side and not look at red and blue and the things that divide us. We need to look at what are the things that unite us. What are our commonalities, not our differences. Right now, people are dealing with a lot of pain. The pain, the things that affect us on a day-to-day basis, those are the things that we could get together and talk about. Those are the things that we could agree on. We can agree that people are dealing with unemployment. We can agree that people are afraid of COVID. We could agree that everyone has been affected by COVID one way or another. So we need to have those conversations and talk about the things that we agree on and talk about the things we have in common. And then from that place, we'll be able to move forward together to talk about some of the other items. But we first have to find a way to come together to build a relationship. And then from that relationship, we can have those uncomfortable conversations and talk about some of the things that we're divided on. But until you find something that unites you, you cannot have those conversations that will change the trajectory of the whole.
Exactly. And it gets back to labels like we talked about.
Correct.
And you talked about unemployment, poverty, none of these things care about Democrat or Republican, black or white. They don't care about those things, right? And, most people shy away from those uncomfortable conversations. And we talked before we started the show that's the most necessary thing that we have to do. In fact, we absolutely must have those conversations, right? And, when you talk about where we're at, and I had mentioned how, I was raised to see color. I was raised to see the differences in us, but I was taught how those differences bring us together, okay? And how that makes us whole human beings, right? We don't have to look the same. We don't have to think the same, talk the same, or walk the same to love each other and to support each other and to lift each other up, right? So thinking along those lines, what can we do? What can Leonard and James do right now to have an impact What can we do coming out of this conversation in your mind? What's an action item short term that you and I can do together?
Well, it starts with the podcast, what we're doing right now, and just continuing our relationship. And it's all about getting groups of individuals together who don't have an opportunity to speak with each other, to see each other,
right,
and just have a genuine conversation. And I tell people like that, get two people in a room who would have never been in each other's orbit. Get a Republican, get a Democrat, get somebody who's never been in a situation where they've been in a diverse crowd. Bring that person into a room with someone who they've not had a conversation with, and just see what happens, and start talking about things that you have in common. And I think one of the biggest things right now, people focus so much on Republican and Democrat. I said, let's just bring people in a room. They might have different beliefs. They might stand on two different sides of the aisle, but there's always something that we could talk about. It might be sports or whatever the case may be. But if you could get those people into the room and talk about something that they both enjoy, and have a great meal, you'd be amazed at some of the things that come out of that conversation. There's a lot of fruit. I've had opportunities to sit down with people. I'll tell you a short story. There's a friend of mine who's a friend of mine now, and he was an avid Trump supporter. And we sat down, we had coffee, and we began to talk about some of the things that we love. We talked about our families. We talked about our wives. We talked about our children. We talked about the country that we both love. And we talked about, for me, growing up as a black man and understanding that there was places where I felt that there was a void and that I was not receiving the treatment that I so rightfully deserve. And he says, there's times right now in our country where I feel that my voice is being drowned out. So once we sat down and we spoke to a place of, everybody just wants to feel that they're valued. Everybody wants their voice to be heard. And once we do that, then we could come together as a whole and say, listen, we want accountability from our government to make sure that we feel valued and our voices are heard.
And see, that's a great point. And just look at the two of us. Right? Because I feel exactly the same way that you do. But if you look at us, if somebody tunes into this and looks at us, right? You're a young black man. I'm an old white guy, right? We should not be getting along. And if you watch the news today, you and I shouldn't be having this conversation, right? Because we're at odds, but we're not.
We're brothers.
Because we're brothers. Because as we talk, we're both seeing that we really are in alignment on just about everything,
exactly.
Right? Because we're pro-people.
Here you go.
Right? So, and I had told you briefly a story about, my lifelong childhood friend. We were talking at a high school reunion. And this June, I've been out of high school as long as you've been alive. So it's my 45th year, right? So, but in talking to him, and he started talking to me about the racism that and the prejudice that he encountered when we were growing up. And I sat quietly and listened to everything he said, and it almost made me cry because I never saw it. I don't remember seeing any of that in that moment. And this is somebody that I was as close with as if he was my own flesh and blood, right? And it broke my heart simply because he suffered. Somebody that I cared about suffered, and I didn't know it. And that was really an eye-opener for me. And it's been a while now since we had that conversation. But it really had made me sensitive to the conversations that are happening right now around our country, and made me willing to engage in those uncomfortable conversations, right? Because if we don't go forward together, we're not going to go forward at all. We're going to go backwards. And when you think about the history of our country and the history of race in our country, there's no more important word to associate that with than truth.
Absolutely.
Right? The truth of the matter is, what I learned in the history books in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up and going to school was not truth, right? It was a watered down, sugar-coated version of the truth. It was based in truth, but it wasn't the truth.
Absolutely.
Right? And, it's something that I'm trying. I've a boatload of grandchildren, right? And I'm trying to teach them, without stepping on any toes or anything, what was real and what was truth and what is truth. And what I'm finding is, while we've made some progress in our public education system, we're still not where we need to be.
We have a long way to go.
Right. And, you know, I have a precocious teenage grandson who has learned to navigate the internet to probably a little bit too well. But he's really intelligent and inquisitive, and he comes up with these things. And he has a twin sister, and they're 14. And they have such a strong social conscience that they have older siblings that don't get it, right? And they have aunts and uncles that are adults that don't get it. And so when we talked briefly about social media and the web and internet and all those things, about what a powerful tool that can be, right?
Absolutely.
But it's a double-edged sword, okay? Because
That it is.
not only can it be a powerful tool in the right hands, just like most things, it can be a powerful weapon in the wrong hands, right? So have you experienced social media where it has been weaponized against you or the community or something along those lines?
For me, it's been weaponized against me. Anytime that I say something against the norm, it's going to be weaponized. And that's something
that goes with me too.
Yeah.
Right.
And I tell people that you just have to have a certain bravery when it comes to utilizing social media, but it also goes along with your purpose. You just have to stand firm on who you are and move forward within that. Because with me, I'm always going to be myself at all times. I don't care what space I'm in, what room I'm in. I'm always going to be authentically me. And with that, you know, I feel that I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm using social media the right way, regardless of what everyone else is doing. So with me, I try to make sure that, I might use social media, say little things here and there that might be funny to lighten the mood. But for the most part, when I'm on social media, I'm making sure I'm doing something that is rooted in love and is educating people on something, you know, always trying to inspire someone. So as long as you do that, you know, you're on the right course. But there are times where there is something that I align with that might be, you know, through the form of activism. If something is wrong, I'm going to stand up and say it's wrong.
And that's good. That's a good thing. You know, activism done the right way, again, is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And passionate activism,
Absolutely.
is always the right thing. You know, if you're willing to stand up, and I know you are because I've seen you do it, if you're willing to stand up for what you believe in, you can't be wrong.
At all.
Right?
Never
so,
wrong.
I love that. And because I love the fact that you've got that courage to stand up and be that passionate activist. Okay, and that's a badge of honor, in my opinion. So, just shifting gears just a little bit. I'm a junior. I'm named after my father. You're number 2.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you have a number 3 at home. So talk to me a little bit about what that legacy means to you from the perspective of the legacy that what you want to honor your father, and then how you feel you want to share your legacy and your father's legacy with your son.
Well, for me, my father is a great man. And for me, I look at it, it's an honor for me to be named after my father.
Right.
You know, I seen my father, you know, was born in Alabama, come to Pittsburgh. His father was a janitor. And my father was able to navigate a world where he was one of, you know, few black men at the time back in the 70s that worked for AT&T, worked his way up to an engineer, and was able to provide a wonderful life for my brothers and I. And for me, you know, I look at my father, and they say Leonard means as brave or as strong as a lion.
There you go.
And I look at my father, and I see his bravery, and I see his strength.
Yes.
And when you look at a lion, the lion is the king of the jungle, and it's because of his mentality. Because the lion is not the smartest in the jungle, is not the tallest, is not the biggest, is not the strongest, but because of his mentality, he rules his environment. And I looked at my father, who grew up in racist America, in the city of Pittsburgh, doing the things that he did. My father ruled his environment. And my father didn't allow anything to hold him back. He pressed forward at all times.
Yeah.
So when I was named Leonard, early on, I didn't understand what that name meant.
Right.
And as I grew into my name, I grew into a role. I grew into a responsibility. So I taught my son early on that with this name comes a privilege, but it also comes a responsibility.
Exactly.
Because you have to be as brave or as strong as a lion as your grandfather was, and how I continue to be now.
Right.
And I lead with that example for my son every day. You know, go out in the world and be a lion and rule your environment, and don't let anything hold you back.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And I get that. And, you know, your father is of a generation that, you know, courage was a requirement. It was a necessity to survive.
Absolutely.
You know, not just to thrive and to move forward and to grow in a career or life, but just to survive, right? And I know that. I know that generation, and I know how hard that was, because that courage wasn't permitted. You couldn't roar, right? A black man at that time couldn't roar. You couldn't beat your chest, and because that's you drew attention to yourself and you got shut down, right? So that had to be a quiet courage, okay, which he's given that to you, right? Because again, when I see the way you carry yourself and just the way you handle yourself, just coming in here, you've never been down here to this community before, never been into this shop before, but when I walked in the door, you got here a little before me. You're already sat down and connected with one of the regulars here, right? And,
Absolutely.
And you know, and that's great. And so that kind of thing, that's courage. You know, courage doesn't always have to be a big splash. It doesn't have to be loud and noisy. It can just be that little ripple that spreads out and hits the shore, right? So and I think you get that, and that impresses me.
And you know, and it goes back to what you're saying about the roar. Whether you roar or not, you're a lion.
Exactly.
A lion is his presence. If a lion walks through the jungle, in the moment that lion emerges, people know that lion is there. He doesn't have to roar. He doesn't have to make a noise. People know that he's there.
Just
and
has
they know
to go about his business being a lion.
Exactly. And they know
that's all you have to do.
Yeah, and they know what he's capable of.
Right.
And I think that when people see me, they know what I'm capable of. And it's not of a fear, it's of an encouragement. Like,
and respect.
I see what this guy does. I see how he loves on people. And we have some organic conversations because they know I'm going to love on them as well.
Right.
When you see me, you know that you're going to have a smile on your face. You know you're going to have a great time. You know that you're going to feel loved and appreciated. So like I tell people, it's just like your presence should change things. You shouldn't have to say a word. Your energy, you should be able to walk into a room and just change the atmosphere. Sure.
And a lot of it is your actions and the way you carry yourself. And, you know, my father always preached that to me, and basically that, you know, believe in yourself, believe in trust what you believe in, follow your heart, right? And the one thing he always, when he would give me these would have these little talks, and he would always say, and leave nobody behind. Never leave anyone behind. And I've lived by that my whole life. And sometimes it's, you know, I've struggled a little bit because you end up grabbing, carrying, picking up some baggage along the way that really isn't yours to carry, you know. And when you've got that heart, that happens, right? And I'm sure that you can relate to that. You've probably carried a few things in your day that weren't yours, and you had to. It's a struggle to put them down sometimes, to let it go and put it down and keep going forward. Yeah,
and I would say that I had to learn that no is a complete sentence.
Right.
You have to be able to understand everyone is not your assignment, and everyone's emergency is not your emergency.
Right. Yeah. You can't save the whole world.
Can't save the whole world.
Right.
You know, so for me, I look at it like this. I'm going to go out into the world every day. I'm going to do all that I can do. I'm going to try to touch as many people's lives as I can. And then at the end of the day, I can rest comfortably knowing that I gave my all. I did my best.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Same mission every day.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're willing to share your journey, right? A lot of people would shy away from saying that, you know, you had an issue and that you were incarcerated, or you did this, you did that. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows.
Oh, right? Not at all.
But you own that, okay? And because of that, you've moved forward and earned respect, right? In your community. You've earned my respect, okay? And I think that's a very courageous thing in itself.
I think it's important to let people know, you know, where you came from and some of the trials and tribulations that you faced, and through God you were able to overcome, because it gives people hope.
Right.
Individuals will come to me and they'll say, Leonard, you don't understand. You don't understand. I have a record. You don't understand what it's like to be labeled for the rest of your life for one mistake. And I says, why don't I understand? Let me tell you about my story. been there,
Right.
done that.
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh, well, since you do understand and you've been where I've been, so how did you navigate it? And I'll sit down with people and I'll say, well, listen, maybe you should do this, and let me connect you here, and let me help you with this.
Right.
And once again, it builds a bond.
Yep.
And when you go out into the community, the more bonds you build, the greater the impact you have. You begin to change the community, then you change the state, and then you start to change the country, and you change the world. So
Right.
with me, I look at it one person at a time.
Absolutely. And as leaders, okay, you and I, what more precious gift can we give another human being than hope? Right? I mean, what else is there? If we can convey that and inspire somebody to have hope because we overcame something, right? I mean, we all have something in our past. We've all made mistakes. I made enough for both of us, right? But at the end of the day, and I was able to rise above them and move forward. And you didn't do it alone. I didn't do it alone. It's impossible to do it by
Right.
yourself. That pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that's a lot of crap. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's
right?
a whole lot of crap. As you said,
That's exactly right. So is there somebody that you can point to? You don't have to mention any names, but is there someone you can point to say, that's the one that really got me going in the right direction? That's the person.
I can rattle people off. My grandmother, rest her soul, Camilla Partlow. My grandfather, Stonewall Partlow. Father, Leonard Hammonds. My mother, Teresa. My brother, Devin Hammonds.
There you go.
Jake Wheatley, Ed Gainey. My wife, LaShondra. My children. You. Everybody that I come in contact plays a hand in my future.
I love that.
Everybody.
I love that.
So the people that I met today, with Nick, I look at him and I'm inspired by the things that he does. Everybody that I come in contact with, I take a piece of them with me when I leave.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And that's how I see growth. That's how I reach my maximum
That's
potential.
how it happens. That's how it happens, right? I think that God puts everyone in our path for a specific reason. We cross paths with the people we're supposed to at exactly the time we're supposed to. Same with every experience, good and bad. Every experience is brought to us to teach us and to guide us and help us to become better, right? So I think that's tremendous. And the fact that you have that mindset, right? And you have to feel things before you can see them.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And sometimes you need that punch in the gut to really open your eyes to see what's been in front of you the whole time.
Yeah, and that's the thing with me. I tell people say seeing is believing. I say no, believing is seeing.
Exactly.
So with me, I
Yes.
walk by faith every day, not by sight, because what you see, it may slow you down. It may stop you in your tracks. So I never go by what I see every day.
Right, because you still have to take that step, whether it's dark or light, right?
Exactly.
And what did Dr. King say? Take the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase, right? And so that if you are looking around all the time, right, you're going to stay where you're at, right? Because we all want to be comfortable. We all want to be safe. We don't like risk. Humans are risk adverse creatures, right? But if we don't take that risk, if we don't put ourselves out there and step outside of what's comfortable, nothing happens. We don't grow. We don't learn.
I found in my life, every time that I experienced growth, it was because I stepped outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
There's no growth in your comfort zone. You have to make a habit of being uncomfortable.
It's exactly that, and we're creatures of comfort, and that takes a lot to do.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk about what you see as the impacts of what's going on in the country, positive and negative, what you see here, feet on the ground in this region.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, well,
All right.
I could say right now, I am seeing some positive change with regards to race relations because I am seeing leadership change.
Okay.
I am seeing Ed Gainey being the first African-American mayor in the city of Pittsburgh. So to see...
In a long, long history.
Yeah,
right?
in a long 200-something years of Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
So you're beginning to see people voting with the mindset of it's time to change. When you look at a Summer Lee being the first African-American woman who was placed in the legislation, I should say.
Summer Lee, by the way, has a cousin
it's
who's a
amazing.
friend of mine who lives in this town, in this city.
Okay, yeah, she's amazing. So you're starting to see people make great strides, and people, they look when President Obama became the first black president, and they said, the country is beginning to change. And I said, well, we see a spark of hope.
Right.
But when you start to see those things locally is when I see the most hope.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to see it national, but you want to be able to reach out and touch it.
Right.
And when you can reach out and touch it, that's the times where I get the most inspired.
Yeah, because, in the moment, President Obama didn't have that. He didn't have that immediate impact locally here, right? When it comes to people of color getting into those leadership roles.
Exactly.
Right? But I do see that, and a lot of it could have to do with the last guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
exactly.
Because it's like, we can't do this anymore. We can't survive that, right?
At all.
So I think that, from my perspective, sitting here, and I'm a little bit further down the journey, along the journey from an experience standpoint than you are, but when I look around, I see positive movement from people that look like me toward that end, right? Because a lot of people, when you think about a 62-year-old white male, right? Well, automatically I'm conservative. There's again those labels, right? And when you think about a 40-something black male, right? Then you're this, and this. You're a liberal, Well, that's not necessarily always the case, right? So, but when I look at this area, the greater Pittsburgh area, and especially down here in the Mon Valley, which that I love dearly, I see a lot more movement toward the middle. We've been out on the edges for a while now, but I do see people that I didn't expect getting pulled to the middle, and I think a lot of that has to do with gentlemen like Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley and others on both sides of the aisle, as well as every race and every gender, right? And even from the LGBTQ community, we talked about that briefly, and I give an example of, the way I was raised, there are two genders, okay, male and female. I can say that's what I believe, and I'll stand firm in that belief. But I honestly believe in people, and I believe in everybody's right and privilege to choose, okay? And I will support anybody that will choose to follow a path that is going to make them whole and make, so where they would find their happiness and their comfort level. So those two things don't necessarily go together. And when I do say that, a lot of times I get challenged on that, right? Well, you're wrong. There's however many genders. Well, that's not what I believe. But I support you in what you believe. Okay. And it comes back, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, it doesn't matter what it is. I can feel strongly about what I believe in, but I can respect you enough to want to know more about what you believe and listen to your perspective, because it's dramatically different than mine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things that I always look at is no one is free until we're all free. Yes. And so many people are bound by so many things in life. So we have these conversations where people are bound into, well, this is our belief, this is our religion, this is the way we've always done things. The only way that we're ever going to move forward as a country and as a people, and just as humanity, is for us to fight for the freedom of something outside of our own.
Right.
So if for me, I look at civil rights is important, this is important, this is important, but then I'll sit down with somebody and they might say, my fight, with the LGBTQIA community, and they might say, this is my fight, or this person over here says, this is my fight. The thing that I begin to do is align myself and find out what is it, as you said, that will allow someone to be whole, and what is it that allow this individual to feel loved and appreciated. And I put my time, talent, and treasure towards that as well. Because in order for me to receive true freedom, we're going to need the collective to come together and say, this is important.
I agree with that.
And then with everything that comes along, you're going to need the collective. If not, there's always going to be somebody left behind.
I agree.
And the thing that we're finding right now is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So it's like whatever is the thing that is the topic of the day right now, we're going to focus our attention there. And then what happens is the person back here that says, oh, well, you don't think, the thing that I'm fighting for is important. And then they begin to feud with this person. we're not going to get anywhere as a country
Right.
if we keep finding ways to keep fighting one another. So I'm always looking at how can we find ways to love one another. People
agree.
say, let's stop the violence. And Mayor Gainey always says we need to find a way to increase the peace. So it's about how you look at things and how you articulate it. Exactly.
Everything is perspective. And I think that as a society, we can only be strong as the weakest among us, right?
There you go.
And I think when you talk about love and respect, that leads me to, if we are going to be free, and I agree with that statement 1,000%, not one of us can be free until we're all free. Mm-hmm. So that tells me that I can't sit back and say, if you have something that means something to you, okay, and there have been some tragedies in Pittsburgh in the Black community, mm-hmm. and you've been at the forefront of some of those, right? Mm-hmm. But I can't sit back here and say, I'm an hour away. I'm down here. That's not my fight. Mm-hmm. No, it has to be my fight. Mm-hmm. Your fight has to be our fight, mm-hmm. right? So what is important to you it's got to mean something to me. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't mean I got to change how I feel about things or how I believe in things, but I have to be willing to come to you and support you, right? Mm-hmm. I got to be willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and make that point and fight that fight with you, mm-hmm. and vice versa, right?
Exactly.
And that's the only way we're going to listen. It's becoming, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not, but it's becoming, instead of trying to thrive, we're trying to survive. Mm-hmm. Right? It becomes about survival.
Yeah, and that's where we are. We're back to a place where people are just trying to survive and not thrive, because once again, we look at the propaganda that's put out, mm-hmm. on in the media and what have you. They're always looking at a way to divide us.
Exactly.
And people, I tell people like this, if I have a headache, that headache is important to me because it is something that's affecting me right now. Right. But at the same time, if you say your back is bothering you, it doesn't take away from my headache to say, I'm going to address this, but I'm also going to be aware of your pain and do what I can to help you as well.
That's absolutely right.
And that's what we need to do. There are things that affect us personally. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we have to deal with because it affects us. That's a pain that we're dealing with.
Right.
And we do need to touch on that. But it doesn't mean that we should lack the compassion, mm-hmm. or just to sit down and hold back that love to say, I understand that you're in pain as well, and let me do what I can to help you. Right. And that's the thing that I have been doing for the course of my life, is acknowledging the things that I struggle with as a Black man in America, mm-hmm. or as a Black man in Allegheny County, but also looking at other people and understand what it is that they're dealing with and saying, look, I acknowledge the things that you struggle with. I acknowledge the things that keep you up at night. So, let's find ways that we can help each other get to a place where we're both at a point to where we feel loved, we feel appreciated, and we do not feel that we're being neglected.
I agree. Everybody needs to be seen.
Absolutely.
Right? But you can't just look at someone and see them. That's mm-hmm. that's not being seen.
At all. Right? That's just being viewed.
Right. I got to feel you. And in order to do that, I got to feel your pain and your joy, mm-hmm. and vice versa. We've got to be able to be that for each other, regardless of where we come from.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of people in my demographic, especially, men of my age, mm-hmm. who are feeling very threatened and very put upon right now, mm-hmm. because of what's happening in our country. Right. And I hear guys will say, I've never been racist. I've never been prejudiced. I do this, I do that, I do this, but I'm getting blamed. The reverse of that is, mm-hmm. right. You never did anything to be discriminated against. You never mm-hmm. did anything to cause that or to invite that. Mm-hmm. Right. So now maybe we're getting a little bit of taste of what the Black community has endured for as long as there's been in America, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think that that is becoming a positive rather than a negative. Mm-hmm. It started out as a negative, but I think it's becoming positive because it's forcing almost that middle-aged white generation, mm-hmm. that 50 to 70-year-old, to start to really pay more close attention and try to learn more about what you went through. Mm-hmm. What you have lived through, right? So I think getting back to what we had talked about, the impacts locally, I'm seeing that movement, and that's very encouraging to me.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to, we're at a place now where people are being forced to grow.
Right.
And with growth comes growing pains.
Yes.
So people are uncomfortable. But once again, there's no growth unless you're outside of your comfort zone. So for me, when people say, Leonard, I don't understand this or I don't understand that, it's like it's part of the process.
Right.
You know, let's have those uncomfortable conversations.
Right.
So you can tell me honestly, you know, this is how I feel about X, Y, and Z. And then we could talk about it. And then I could share my lived experience because our lived experiences are the things that help us navigate this world.
Yes.
And there are some things that you have experiences that will help me on my journey and vice versa. And I feel that the only way that we're going to move forward as a country or as a community is once again to have those uncomfortable conversations and just truly be honest with each other about how we feel with the things that we experience on an everyday basis.
I agree. And we have to rely on each other. And that's where that basic human respect for one another comes into play. Because I don't know, there are things that, I'm going to use myself as an example, using Leonard and James, right? There are things that I could say that might rub you the wrong way, or you might take in a way that I didn't intend it, because culturally I don't know that, right? But I need you to respect me enough to say, let's talk, right? And vice versa, right? Because, you know, you can't possibly know what my journey's been like, right? Any more than I can know yours. So if we can't come to that place of mutual respect, okay, then we'll continue to struggle. But I think we're getting so close to that now. I getting back to that word, right? Hope, right? I'm hopeful that your children and my grandchildren won't have to have those conversations. Okay. And that gives me hope. That gives me hope for a future.
Absolutely. And it just always goes back to we have to extend grace to one another. Everything that I say is always rooted in love. If I could look at you and love you as my brother, I could give you grace as my brother. And we could have conversations to where we could forgive one another. If we say something and it's because, you know, if we knew that something was going to offend someone, we would never deliberately say something.
Right.
We're saying something because it might have been the way that we were raised or from our lived experiences. And I think that we live in a world right now where people are so quick to say, I'm offended by this, I'm offended by this, and let's seesaw communication. And I no longer want to talk with this person. We're done. I don't want to build with this person. That's a lack of love.
That's exactly right.
And we're never going to get anywhere with that. Never.
That's exactly right. And it's all about love, right? That's where this came from, right? If you look at those 5 words, okay, that's what life is all about. Right?
Absolutely.
If we can't live our lives to the fullest, why are we even here? And we can't live our lives to the fullest without each other. We need each other to have that full life. And to have each other, we have to love each other. Okay? And to love each other, we have to learn from each other. Okay, so it's like, and then always, God's walking with us, right? We're walking in faith, okay? So once we do those things, once we're able to live our lives fully and we learn to love each other, right? And we learn about each other and we keep that faith, we keep walking in faith, we're going to inspire everybody to join us, right?
Absolutely. And like I said, you know, when I look at this, when I see live, love, learn, pray, inspire, that's the foundation. That's the foundation.
My father always called that the 5 pillars of a good life. That's
the great 5 pillars to build upon anything.
Right.
Because with that, you could accomplish all things.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So, I mean, I love it because, again, we're sitting here having a conversation and there's no tension. There's no, what are we going to do? And again, you know, this is the most in-depth, the longest conversation you and I have ever had.
Absolutely.
Right?
Enjoyed every second of it.
And it's like, it's not, it wasn't forced. It's not forced. It's not tense. It's, you know, because you're being honest with me and I'm being honest with you. Absolutely. And this is all that we need to do in our country, in the entire world, really, to right a lot of the wrongs, to fix a lot of the problems. Just have these kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
You know,
just talking with one another, making time to just talk.
Exactly.
And you'd be amazed how many things will be resolved if people just take the time to talk, get to know one another.
I love it. You invite every voice to the table. right?
Exactly.
Not everybody will want to come. Not everybody will come for the right reasons, but you have to get everyone to the table.
Yeah, and it starts with an invitation. And
Right.
I think that
Right.
you have to have a heart to carry something out, to see it out. But it starts with the invitation. And that says a lot, because there's a lot of people that won't even invite people to the table. And I think
Absolutely.
when someone says that I see you and I value you and I want you at the table because I want to speak with you. I want to learn more from you. And I want to see how we can live together. I want to see how we can love on one another. I want us to pray together. All the things that you said, and how can we inspire one another?
Exactly. And, my father always said that, I said he was a teacher, but he always said knowledge is a moving target. You can't stand around and wait for it to come to you. You got to chase it and you got to go where it's at.
I know that's right. That's
Right?
powerful.
So if we don't come together, we'll just drift farther apart.
That's the truth.